Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to ROI number 77. So today we are going to make this scene from scratch. First we start with making a lighting system. We continue by modeling everything from scratch, adding materials and textures to different objects and also UV edit them. And then we will go deeper into the process of making a lighting system and we will learn a pretty cool trick that we will use it in every single one of our projects. Then we get to the more demanding part where we import a sign directly into Blender, making a decent workflow to animate multiple cameras and their appearance according to the sign. And we will get a pretty interesting and cool result. I will provide all the assets and materials that I use in this project for you to download. The links will be in the description. So without any further ado, let's get this going. Let's begin. So since later we need to add textures and materials for the different objects that we model, it is better for us to first make the lighting system. So go to the render panel, set the render engine on cycles and device on GPU compute. Then switch into rendered view. For the lighting, we are going to use an HDRI, which is this one, MADFR. The link to download it will be in the description. After downloading the HDRI, now to add it into our scene, expand the timeline and switch it into shader editor and set it on world. Then over here press Shift A and search for environment texture, which is this one. Add it over here and then plug it into the background node. Click on open and navigate to where you have downloaded the HDRI. Select it and then open image. And there it goes. Then to adjust the HDRI, we can use the Node Wrangler add-on, and we are going to use this Node Wrangler add-on a lot in this project. So make sure to enable it. So you can go to Edit, Preferences, in the Add-ons tab here, search for Node Wrangler, which is this one. Simply check this box to activate the add-on. Then select the environment texture, press Ctrl T and the Node Wrangler will automatically bring up the texture coordinate and the mapping nodes. And on the mapping node, if we set the Z rotation on 32, it will rotate the HDRI and it will also provide a better lighting system for us. This is what I did in the main project. So the adjustment of the HDRI and the lighting system is enough for the time being. But later, after we have made the scene, we will adjust the HDRI and the lighting system much more. And it is also worth mentioning that I will teach you a very good and functional trick. And believe me, you're going to use that in every single one of your projects. It is insane. Just wait and see. Let's continue with making the environment. So collapse the shader editor and switch into solid view. Then press Shift A in the mesh, add a plane. For the scale of it, press N to open the side menu. In the item tabs, we can use the dimensions. So set the dimension X on 50 and Y on 44. Then press numpad 7 to go into top view. And this part is not necessary. I just in the main project move the plane on the Y axis and then a little bit on the X axis. Something like this. Since we have scaled up the plane in the object node, definitely press Ctrl A to apply the scale. Then with the plane selected, press Tab to go into edit mode. Make sure the edge selection tool is selected and press A to make sure the entire plane is selected. Press Alt E and from the extrude menu, choose extrude edges. Press Z, hold down the Shift key and slightly extrude them up. So something like that looks nice. Then again press E to extrude them once more, right click to drop them in the same place, press S and scale them outward like so. That's enough. Once more press E, then Z, and if you hold down the control key you can set it exactly on the grid, like so. Now choose the face selection tool and select the face in the middle. Press P to separate it by selection. Jump back into object mode, select the separated face, press F2 and rename it to ground plane. Select the other part, press F2 and rename it to barrier. Now we can go ahead to make the walls. So Shift A, add another plane. Then for the scale of it, set the dimension X on 36.5 and Y on 0.5. Then press GX, move it to the left a little bit on the X-axis and also a little bit on the Y-axis. So this is fine. Then with the new plane selected, if you press the forward slash key, you can isolate the selected object. With it selected, go into edit mode, press Ctrl R to add an edge loop. Click to accept and then move it to the right, like so. And if you want to adjust it later, you can select the edge, and if you press G twice, you can slide it on the plane, which is pretty handy. Then come over here, press Ctrl R again to add another edge loop. Click to accept and this time move it to the left. Now choose the face selection tool and select this face in the middle. Press E, hold down the Shift key, extrude it up a little bit. This is fine. Then select the other two faces, press E, and this time extrude them a little bit more. Somewhere around 3.05 is fine. You can check it from here and you can also control it by this property. Then come over here, select this face and we are going to give it an inset. But here is a catch. If now we press I to give it an inset, you can see our inset is not even and it is not decent or looking good at all. That's because we have scaled up this plane in the object mode. So press tab to jump back into object mode, and if you take a look at here you can see that the scale property is not applied. So press Ctrl A to apply the scale. Now if we jump back into edit mode, select this face and press I, you can see we have a pretty decent and even inset. So give it a little bit of inset, then press E and give it a slight inward extrusion. And this simple process adds another layer of detail to our wall. So let's get to this face and do the same thing. Press I, give it a slight inset, then E, extrude it inward a little bit. That's fine. So these two are the front walls, and now we should make the back walls. So we should select all the faces of these two walls except for this part. So we can select these faces and hold down the Shift key to select the remaining faces, and also over here. Make sure to select all of them. So this is fine. Then with them selected, press Shift D to make a duplicate. Press Y and move them on the Y axis to make a gap between them. Then to make some variations between the front and the back wall, choose the vertex selection tool and enable the wireframe mode. Come over here and select all these vertices. Press G, X, move them back a little bit, and that's some variations. So this seems nice. Next up, to fill this gap, choose the edge selection tool and choose this edge, this outer edge. Press Shift D to make a duplicate, right click to drop it in the same place. Then press P to separate it by selection. Jump back into object mode, select the separated part, press tab to again go into edit mode. Press A to make sure everything is selected, zoom back a little bit, press E, X and extrude it up until the adjacent wall and fill the gap with it. And make sure there is no gap here, so this seems fine. Now we can switch into solid view and go into object mode. The separated part is selected, so press F2 and rename it to back glass. Then select the wall, press F2 and rename it to wall. So the gap between the walls is the interior part, and to fill that, Shift A to add another plane. For the scale of it, set the dimension X on 36.5 and dimension Y on 7.5. Then press numpad 7 to go into top view, press G, X, move it to the right to adjust it. Then if needed, press G, Y, move it on the Y axis, and I guess we should scale it up. So press S, Y to scale it up a little bit. Press tab to go into edit mode, press A to make sure everything is selected, press E, extrude them up a little bit. That's fine. And rename it to interior ground plane. Again, select the walls, press tab to go into edit mode and select these two edges. Press Shift D to make a duplicate, right click to drop them in the same place, press P to separate them by selection. Go back into object mode, select the separated part, press tab to go into edit mode, press A to select everything. Then press E, Z, extrude them up like so. Something like that looks nice. Press A to select everything, then press E and extrude them up until the duplicated walls. Now we can go back into object mode, press F2 and rename it to sailing. Again, select the walls, press tab to go into edit mode, this time select these two edges. Then press F to fill them with a new face. Press P to separate the face by selection. Go back into object mode, select the separated face, press tab to go into edit mode. Press Ctrl R to add an edge loop over here. Then scroll forward to make it 2. Click to accept and right click to drop them in the same place. Then with them selected, press Ctrl B, hold down the Shift key, move your mouse to give them a slight bevel like so. Press X to delete these faces. Go back into object mode, press F2 and rename it to left glass. Then with it selected, press Shift D, then press X and move it to the other side of the walls. Place it here and rename it to right glass. Now we can press the forward slash key to exit the isolation mode. So the modeling part is almost done. Now we can go ahead to add the textures. I put the link to download all the textures that I use in the description so that you can follow the exact same thing. It comes as a zip file and you need to extract it. So expand the shader editor, switch it into objects. Then set the viewport on rendered view. Let's begin with the ground plane. So select it, then in the shader editor make a new material for it and rename it to ground plane. For the ground plane, we are going to use these textures, VH3NDGE. So open the folder and here you can see there are 4 different maps. Select all of them, drag them over to Blender and drop them into the shader editor. So here we have 4 different maps, the albedo, which stands for the base color, the AO, which is the ambient occlusion, the normal map, and the roughness. And by the way, you can switch the place of these two. So select both of them and if you press R, you can switch their place. Then another important point here. For each map, there is a property called color space, which has so many different options to choose. So for the base color map, you should set the color space on sRGB and the rest of the maps should be set on non-color. So let's quickly do that. Then plug the ambient occlusion into the base color on the principal BSDF. Plug the roughness into roughness and then for the normal map, Shift A, search for the normal map node. Add it here, plug it into the normal on the principal BSDF. Then plug the normal map into the normal map. And a strength of 1 works just fine. Then here is the ambient occlusion, which should be mixed with the base color. So Shift A, search for mix color. Place it after the base color and make sure the base color is plugged into the A input. Then plug the ambient occlusion into the B input and switch the mix color into multiply. Then set the factor on 1 so that we can use the entire effect of the ambient occlusion. So the texture looks huge for the time being, and we should make the pattern smaller, and for that we can again use the Node Wrangler add-on. So select the albedo map, press Ctrl T to bring up the texture coordinate and the mapping nodes. Let's move them over here and then plug the mapping node into all the other maps so that we can tweak all of them at the same time. On the mapping node, there is a property called scale. If we increase the scale, we can decrease the size of the patterns, as you can see. So let's set all the axes on 10. Now this looks much better. And I guess this texture is a little bright, so we can make it a little darker. And for that, Shift A, search for hue saturation and place it after the mix color. And if we decrease the value property, we can make the texture darker. Let's set it on 0.6. I guess that's a decent number here. I really like the effect. The next one in the row is the barrier, for which we are going to apply the same material as the ground plane. So select the barrier, then shift select the ground plane to make it the active object. Now press Ctrl L and in the transfer data menu choose link material. And there you have it. Now both of them share the same material, and if we make changes to one of them, it will also affect the other one. So to be more specific, we can select the barrier, then on the hue saturation node, if we change the hue property, you can see it affects both the barrier and the ground plane. And to prevent that, here you can see there is a number. This number indicates how many objects in this scene share this material. And if we click on that, we can make this material a unique and new material. And if we change that, it doesn't affect the other one. So let's get back to the mapping node and set all the scale axes back on 1. Now you can notice that the barrier texture is stretched and doesn't look good at all. The reason is, since this barrier is an extruded part, its UV is pretty messed up. And to fix that, we need to go to the UV editing tab, which we can find here. On the right side, we have the 3D viewport. So let's switch it into rendered view. Right now we are in edit mode, so make sure you are on object mode. With the barrier selected, press the / key to isolate it. Then press tab to go into edit mode, press A to make sure everything is selected. Now to UV unwrap the barrier, press U and from the UV mapping menu choose unwrap minimum stretch. And if I disable the overlays, you can see the texture is looking much better now. Then on the left side, let's zoom back, press A to select all the faces, and if we press S, we can adjust the scale of the pattern. So let's press S, then type down 10 to scale it up by 10. Now if we take a look, it looks much better. However, if we come over here, we can see some issue. The texture on this interior part looks a bit weird. And to fix that, in the edit mode, we can select this singular face. Press U and again unwrap it by minimum stretch. Then we can press S to scale it up to get our desired look. Let's take a look. Yeah, it looks much better now. And if there's any issue with any other face, we can do the same thing. For example, with this one. Select the singular face, U, unwrap, minimum stretch. Let's scale it up by 10. Now this is fine. And if there's any other faces with the same issue, you can do the same process for it. Now let's get back to the layout. So this is getting together just fine. And now we can concentrate on the walls. So select the wall and make a new material for it. Then rename it to wall to stay organized. And for them we are going to use this texture, Concrete 031, which includes 3 different maps. And this time to add a texture, let's take advantage of our good friend the Node Wrangler. So select the principal BSDF, then press Shift Ctrl T and navigate to the folder of the mentioned texture, which is Concrete 031. Open the folder, select all the maps, then Principal Texture Setup. And there you have them. But the texture is not looking good at all, and that's due to the same issue, the UV. So go to the UV editing tab press the forward/key to exit the isolation mode and then isolate the walls. Let me make some room here. With the wall selected, go into edit mode and we should UV unwrap the wall. And for this one, which is a little bit more complicated than the barrier, it is better to add seams to the object. Seams will decide where to cut the texture so that it won't be stretched. Of course, in this particular case, we have a huge amount of edges to mark as seam. So choose the edge selection tool and we can actually select every single edge. Let's select these edges. On a concrete wall, you don't expect the texture to be continued from here to here. I mean, in real life, when we see a concrete wall, this side has a texture or any concrete material, and this side is not the continue of this part, and they are separate parts. So we can actually go ahead and select all the edges, and the more edges that we have to mark as seam, we will get a better result. So let's take advantage of that. Then get to this side and also select these edges. Now to add the seams, press U and here choose Mark Seam. And by doing that, you can see that the selected edges have turned into red. This is pretty handy because once we want to take the seam away from it, we can simply find it, select it, press U and clear seam. So now let's UV edit this wall. Press A to select everything, then press U and this time choose Unwrap Angle Base. And you can already see that it looks much better. So with all the faces selected, on the left side press A to select everything and then scale them up until you get your desired look. Let me disable the overlays to take a better look. Something like that looks nice. And here is a point that is worth mentioning. You can select the UV island, then press G, X and move it to get a different look, like this. Of course, we can press G and Y and also move it on this side, which is a pretty handy feature. So this seems nice. And of course, we can select a singular face, for example, this one on the top or this one at the back. Let's go with this. Let's say you are not happy with the look of it. You can select it, then in the UV island, you can see it from here. And if you, let me disable the overlays, and if you move it, you can give it a different look. So I want to have a line crossing the entire face, something like that. This looks really nice. And you can do that with every single face that you see here. Let's get back to the layout. Let's add some variation to this part of the wall. So with the wall selected, go into edit mode and select these three faces. Press Shift D to make a duplicate of them, right click to drop them in the same place. Press P to separate them by selection. Then go back into object mode, select the separated part. Press F2, let's rename it to Wall 2. And as you already know, it is sharing the same material with the main wall. So let's make it a unique one and also rename it to Wall 2, just to stay organized. And I guess we can make it a little bit darker. So to do that, Shift A, search for color ramp. Place it after the base color. Then open the arrow menu and choose flip color ramp. And then set the interpolation on ease. Nothing is actually changing, that's because we should press G, then Z and slightly move it up. There it goes. Then to reveal this side, you can scale it down on the x-axis. So press S, X, slightly scale it down. Now we can see it. So on the color ramp, select the black slider and move it to the left a little bit. Then select the white slider, open its color menu, and if we decrease the value property, we can make it darker. Just like so. So let's set it on 0.05. Then go into edit mode, press A to select everything, press S, Y, scale it down to get this nice look. Now this looks much better. And Ctrl A to apply the scale. And we can also go to the UV editing tab, select the mentioned part, go into edit mode, And let me disable again the overlays. We can move it on the x-axis to get this nice look, this line that crosses the entire part. So let's get back to the layout. Now we can think about the interior ground plane, and for that we are going to use the same material as the ground plane. So select the interior plane, shift select the ground plane, press Ctrl L, choose link material. Let's get to the UV editing tab, isolate the interior plane, go into edit mode, and here is a good point. We only need to adjust the top face, since the rest of the faces are not going to be visible. So we can select this top face, press U, unwrap, let's go with angle base. Then we can come over here, press A to select everything, press S to scale it up. And if we take a look, we definitely can realize that there is a problem, because the texture is not looking good at all. That's because we have scaled it up in the object mode, and if you press N in the item, we can see the scale is not applied. So Ctrl A to apply the scale. Now if we go back into edit mode, select this face, press U, unwrap, angle base. Now it is working properly. So let's scale it up, make the pattern a little smaller. I guess this is fine. Why not giving it some variations? So in the UV editor tab, so press R, hold down the control key to rotate it exactly by 90 degrees. Now if we take a look, yeah, I like it more. Shall we rotate it on this side? 180 degrees, better now. Now let's get back to the layout. And for the interior plane, I guess we can make it a little brighter. So in the shader editor, make its material a unique font, rename it to interior ground plane. Then on the hue saturation, we need to increase the value property. Let's go for 0.8. This looks better, or 0.9 maybe. Let's go with that for now. We can always adjust it. And if you ask me, I guess the pattern is so small, because here we have a pretty big pattern. So we can go here, scale it down to increase the size of the pattern. Then press G, Y to give it a different look like this. Now if we take a look in the layout, yeah, it is better now. There was so much difference between the interior plane and the ground plane. Now it is more natural. Then to fill this side, which looks a little bit empty, we can select this separated part, go into edit mode, select this face, go into top view, press Shift D to make a duplicate, then press Y and move it towards the glass. Then we can come over here, select this singular edge, press G, X, move it towards the wall so that it covers this part of the interior. Then we can select this face, Shift D once more, press Z, move it up and put it above the glass. Let me take a look over here, should move it down. Yeah, this looks much better now. This is looking pretty fine. And the last one that needs texture is the sailing. For it, we are going to use this one, Concrete 029. So select the sailing in the shader editor, make a new material for it, rename it to sailing. Select Principal BSDF, press Shift Ctrl T, navigate to the folder of the mentioned texture, which is Concrete 029. Select all the maps, then Principal Texture Setup. As you already can guess, let's go to the UV Editing tab to UV edit the sailing. So isolate the sailing, go into Edit mode, and like the previous one, for this we also have a bunch of edges to mark as seam. And to be honest, we can press A to select everything, then press U to mark all of them as seam. Then again press U, unwrap, angle base. You can already see the effect. Let's change the scale. Yeah, this is looking good, and I guess I want to have something like this. G, Y, move it to get a different look. Yeah, I really like that. Let's have a line crossing across this face, so select this singular face. You can press G, Y, move it here to get that line crossing the entire face. Looks much better. let's get back to the layout. So this was the last object that needed texture. Then for the glass, we can make a simple glass material. However, for the main project, I made a pretty decent glass material. So let's get into it. Select the glass and let's have a little bit more focus on it. Make a new material, rename it to glass. Delete principal BSDF, Shift A, search for mix shader. Place it here and then plug it into the material output. Now for the top shader input, Shift A, search for transparent node, not translucent, transparent. Plug it into the first shader, then for the second shader, Shift A, search for glossy. Make the connection. Then to add more detail to our glass and adjust it much more, Shift A, search for noise texture and plug the factor into the transparent node. Add a mix color. Place it after noise texture and make sure noise texture is plugged into the B input. Then to control the roughness of the noise texture, Shift A, search for clamp and plug the result into the roughness. The numbers are fine. We are going to tweak that later. So on the noise texture, let's increase the detail to 11.2. Then we should make a mask to differentiate between these two materials, which is the transparent and the glossy. So we can take advantage of the layer weight. Add it here, then plug the facing into the factor on the mix shader. And then to control it more, Shift A, search for RGB curves. Place it after the layer weight, and on the RGB curves, we should make a curve like this. This is the exact same thing I did in the main project. To finalize the glass material, we can make a group for this. So select all the nodes except for the material output. Press Ctrl G to set them into a group. And we are going to use this group input a lot. So let me quickly clean up a little bit. And we can press Tab to jump back out of the group, which you can see is here. And again, with the group selected, we can press Tab to enter the group. To be able to adjust the color of the glass, you can take advantage of the color property on the glossy BSDF. So plug it into the group input. Then plug its roughness. As the name says what it does. Let's get to the mix color. So plug the factor into the group input. And since its name is not specific to what to do, we can press N to open the side menu. In the group tab, here you can see the group sockets. And if we expand it, here is the factor. So double click on it and rename it to dirt. Then on the noise texture, plug the scale into the group input and rename it to dirt scale. Then also plug the distortion. And as you already can guess, rename it to dirt distortion. Finally, plug the value property on the clamp into the group input and rename it to dirt roughness. Now if we press Tab to exit the group, here you can see our sockets that we can adjust from here. So let's quickly do that. Set the roughness on 0.03, dirt on 0.655, dirt scale on 3. Dirt distortion on the same 0 and dirt roughness also on the same 1. And this glass material is a pretty decent one. What we should do now is to select the left and the right glasses, then shift select the back glass, press Ctrl L, link material. And there it goes. So I want to teach you a pretty cool trick about this glass. So let's say we have a PNG logo like this and we want to stick it to this glass. Well, in the normal way, we would go to the modifiers panel and from here in the deform we would use a shrink wrap modifier. But there is a much better way which can happen in the same shader editor and it will be 100% procedural. So since the left and the right walls also have this material which you can see here, it says 3 different objects have the glass material. So select the back glass, make its material a unique one. Let's rename it to back glass. So drag and drop the PNG logo into the shader editor. And here you can see that. Let's set it here Then to add it into our game, Shift A, search for Mix Shader. Place it right here and make sure the glass material is plugged into the first shader input. Then on the logo map, plug the color into the second shader input and then plug the alpha into the factor. But right now we cannot see anything, and that's where we can again take advantage of the node wrangler. So with the PNG map selected, press Ctrl T, and I bet we cannot still see that. So if we use the location or rotation or scale, 100% we cannot see anything. And we can solve that in the UV editing tab. So with the back glass selected, go into edit mode, select all the faces. Here press A to select everything, and you can see when I say the UV editing is messed up, I mean this. All these faces, or it is not faces, it is vertex. So if I move it up and choose the vertex selection tool, you can see that this glass has only 4 vertices. Vertices, I mean vertexes. This glass has only 4 vertices. And it doesn't matter if it has a 100 vertices or 1000, when its UV is messed up, you will get the same effect right here. So let's get back. Press A to select everything, then press U, unwrap. We can go with the angle base. Now let me disable the overlays here, and on the UV editor, press S to scale up. Here you can see. So let's put it here for the time being and get back to the layout. We will fix the rest of the problem over here. So first of all, you should rotate it. I guess it's the Z-axis. Yeah. Let's set it on -90. And then the PNG logo is being repeated. If you are looking for something like that, then go for it. But if you're not, on the PNG logo map, here you can see there is a property which is set on repeat. So if we set it on clip, we will have only one of it, but where did it go? But we can simply fix that. Yes, it's the Y-axis of the location. So if we increase it, we can move it down. There it goes. And let's move it on the X-axis, place it somewhere around here. And not to mention that we can use the scale to make it bigger or smaller. Then we have the main color of the logo here, but if you don't like that, on the PNG logo map, Shift A, search for Hue Saturation. Plug it into the color that goes into the second shader input. If you want to make it white, you can decrease the saturation to 0. If you want to make it black, you can decrease the value to make it black. But if you want to change the color, you can use the hue property. And you can see that you can get any type of color that you like. So let's change it to black. This will match the mood of our scene. And you can add as much logos or writings as you like. Now, as I have mentioned at the beginning of the video, let's adjust our lighting system. So switch the shader editor to world. And here we have the nodes that we added before. So this is the basic setup in the shader editor to use an HDRI in Blender. And here I want to teach you a pretty cool trick. So first of all, select all these nodes except for the word output. Press Shift D to make a duplicate, move them down over here. Then to combine these two together, Shift A, search for Mix Shader. Place it here, then plug the duplicated background node into the second shader input. And here is the factor that works magic. So Shift A, search for Light Pass. This is a great node. So let me tweak them a little bit so that we can make some space. Place it here, and here the first property of the light path, which is called is camera ray. So plug it into the factor. Nothing has happened, but here is the fact. And before explaining about anything, let me show you what it does actually. So on the first background node, I set the strength on 0. See what happens. We have the HDRI, but we don't have any lighting from that. So I set it back on 1. Then on the second background node, I set the strength on 0. Now we have the lighting, but we don't have the HDRI. I guess you get the idea. We can differentiate between what we see from the HDRI and what it does to our scene. I mean, the lighting and the brightness of the HDRI is totally different from each other, and we can tweak them separately. So, for example, let's say this HDRI is too bright. So I set it on 0.5 to make it a little darker, or 0.3 for example. But I want to have my scene pretty lit up, so I can set the strength of the first background node to 2 for example. Just see how powerful this trick is. Let's set it on 10. You see, you can tweak the lighting separately and it is amazing. So let's set both of them on 2. This is what I used in the main project. And this is not all. The best part is coming right now. And as I have mentioned, this setup of nodes controls the HDRI itself, not its lightening. So we can simply remove this HDRI, click on open, add another HDRI. For example, I want to go with this one. So I add it. See, the HDRI has changed, but the lighting no. And this is a really powerful workflow. I use it in every single one of my projects, and I highly suggest you to do that as well. Just think about the possibilities of this workflow. It is amazing. So let's set it back to what it was. And as I have mentioned, I set the lightening power on 2, so that my scene will be a little brighter. So this was the first part of this tutorial, and in the next video we will add a 3D model car which doesn't look good that much because its material will have some problems. It is not that high quality, but we will add a really decent and high quality material to it, and we will give it a really decent look. And then we'll get to the camera animation, which is the most fun part of this tutorial. So see you next time.